Hi, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me. First of all, I'll just say sorry. Sorry, it's been a little while. I've just been really busy with other things over the last few weeks. But anyway, this is a video I've been really looking forward to doing, and an LP release that I've been really looking forward to listening to. And as regular viewers will know, one of my probably, in my top two favourite bands are Genesis and Yes. I was sort of, if we look at it over the course of my life, possibly Yes would even sort of go into number one spot. But here we have Yes 90125, which was their 1983 release, and it sort of signified to my taste the sort of the end of me being fanatically into Yes. I've actually bought nearly all of their releases to date. I noticed there's a new issue of Talk just gone on sale today. I'll have a think about whether I get that or not. But for me, the golden age of Yes ended with this release, to be perfectly honest. The only one after this was Fly From Here, and the reissue of that, Fly From Here Return Trip, I think it was called. But anyway, I'll get onto that. I will do a video about Yes and my favourite Yes albums and all the rest of it at some point. Anyway, Yes 90125. So this album was released in 1983, as I say, and I'm just going to get hold of, this is my original pressing here, okay? Now I would have, this was absolutely in my heyday of being into Yes. I would have bought this on the day of release. So what I've got here is the first issue. There's its insert. Here we got the lyric sheet inner. And then I was working at Reading Hi-Fi Centre around about that time, and here we go. I cleaned this one on their Keith Monk's machine back in the day. Now, just to specify what my reference here is, we have got in the matrix here STC 835337-C. That's etched, and then we've got stamped, master disc, and then etched RL, Robert Ludwig 37. So this is this is an original first pressing. So I think we can kind of assume this is as good as it gets, and I'm sure you can see this is in very fine condition indeed. And I haven't played it for some time, to be honest. I absolutely loved it when it came out, because I was in my late teens, early 20s. And, I kind of got into the 80s sound, so to speak. Things like, notably I would say things like ABC, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And of course, what we're talking about here is Trevor Horn Productions. Really, really blew me away. I mean, it was, we look back on it now and it's very produced, of course, but then what is production? It's produced, but it's well produced, not in an audiophile sense, just in a this sounds damned fantastic sense, which is actually far more relevant, I think. Anyway, as some of you know, Trevor Horn joined Yes in 1980, I think it was, for the Drama album. I actually saw them on that tour, and I thought, I actually think Drama is a good album. I prefer it to Tormato without any doubt, and I think I prefer this to Drama, but Big Generator and the albums that followed this, I think Drama is a much better album. And then, as I say, the one that sort of only one of the more recent releases that really stands out to me is Fly From Here, which is kind of the Drama lineup. Anyway, that's I rather digress. But this was a phenomenal Yes coming into the 80s production. produced by Trevor Horn. Mind-blowingly good sound, but very, very, very much of the era. And you put this back on and it sounds so 80s, and it sounds kind of quite bright. Is that just, 80s start production. Owner of a Lonely Heart is the first track, and it's you can't not notice it, so to speak. But I want to get into this new issue, which I'll just discuss. So here we've got the, I keep doing these Atlantic 75 anniversaries. As you can see, we've got a beautiful cover with what was on the inner printed here. So it's a very beautiful thing. It's a double album, cut at 45 RPM, cut by Kevin Gray, I believe, and Kevin Gray, and it's a pressed on 180 gram vinyl at QRP. It's a very, 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 very beautifully produced piece of vinyl. And of course, 1983, when the original came out, was very much not the heyday of vinyl. CD was sort of on the rise at this point in time, and I just don't think any vinyl from that era sounds particularly stunning. Now, I've read reviews going on about, the original Bob Ludwig cut, he rescued it, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I've got the Bob Ludwig cut there. It sounds great in an 80s kind of way, but it doesn't really sound that great in the wholeness of vinyl. And I want to talk about the differences between these and what they sound like. So let's start off with Owner of a Lonely Heart. And if we start off listening to the original, so instantly the sound is rich and fat in a nice way. The bass is nicely weighted, but it's definitely not it's not the best recorded Chris Squire's bass you ever heard. I mean, Chris Squire for me is one of the absolute key elements in the Yes sound. His bass is just phenomenal. It's very, very tuneful, very, very melodic, but it's gutsy and it's growly. It's just one of those things that is absolutely core to the Yes sound for me. And it's not as detailed and as, you don't sort of see and feel into Chris Squire's bass quite as much on this as you'd like. The drums have got a very, very 80s sound, and the keyboards and guitars. Keyboards on this one is Tony Kaye, who's returns to the band after leaving following the Yes album, and he's much more of an organ player, kind of a funky sort of R&B kind of groovy organ player than a multifaceted superstar like Rick Wakeman. But I actually find it kind of quite nice and honest. I really do actually like the first three Yes albums with Tony Kaye on them. And at times I find Rick Wakeman a little bit over the top, to be perfectly honest. That's just my own opinion. Although, Wakeman is the keyboard player for the bulk of the, for me, the absolute sort of golden age of Yes. Anyway, the other kind of, key element about Yes is obviously John Anderson's voice. Now, John's voice on this is not overly forward. The backing vocals, which are, again, it's I think specific, mostly Chris Squire, but the backing vocals on Yes are, again, it's part of that unique special magic recipe, and they are extremely well picked out and delineated on the on this recording. But John's voice it's not overly forward, but it does sound a little bit sort of pinched, I would say. And then we've got Trevor Rabin on guitar, and this was the first sort of album that Trevor Rabin did. Everyone, the kind of the classic Owner of a Lonely Heart guitar riff. It's like, yeah, it's real kind of cool, rocking kind of riff, but it's not archetypal Yes for me. For me, Steve Howe's sort of beautiful, breathing, feeling, penetrating, kind of searching guitar is much more a part of the sound than just this sort of rocky riff type of guitar of Rabin. So it's a very 80s sound, but it's whilst it's impressive, it's not the best thing in the world for me on that. And I just want to run through track by track very quickly, or at least a few tracks, the impressions of this original. So we go on to the next track, Leave It. I mean, it's got this drum intro, which is hugely impressive. Trevor Rabin's guitar sounds great, although it's not 100% my thing. You've kind of got this sort of, as the vocals start, this sort of stabby guitar sort of thing, which is not, again, it's not really my thing. And then you get some nice guitar riffs, and then you've got some superb Chris Squire bass, and then we slip into a funny sort of off-time kind of thing, and then a cappella vocals, which are just wonderfully layered, and it's it goes on, and it's very, 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 very 80s, very, very, very impressive, but not quite so much Yes, if you see what I mean. Now, this is where, we go through, I mean, it's a phenomenal album. Owner of a Lonely Heart, brilliant. Hold On, brilliant. It Can Happen, brilliant. Changes. I mean, really, Cinema's recorded live. It's an instrumental, live in the studio. Our song's a little bit sort of twee in a tomato kind of way, but the rest of it is it's really damn good stuff. But it's kind of harder and more rocking than most, Yes. But I just want to now turn over to the Atlantic 75 version and how this differs, because it is notably different, and in my opinion 100% better, and that's what I want to try and get across here. So first thing is Owner of a Lonely Heart. We start off with on here immediately the vocal, John's vocal sounds more natural, and this is a really interesting thing because Bob Ludwig, he got the best out of this in the time, according to what everyone thinks. But it is a very kind of forward, bright 80s sounding record, and from take from that it was recorded in that way. And there's all sorts of little tricks and things that were done that are of the era, particularly affecting things like the drums and sort of layering and separation. But so Owner of a Lonely Heart, John Anderson's voice, it sounds less forced, and the very, very, very critical thing here, it actually sounds more like John. And I've mentioned this in a couple of other sort of comments about Yes. On this, you can actually hear more clearly John's Lancashire accent, and I find that really, really pleasing trait, tonal colour, if you like, to his voice, thing to hear. But it sounds less forced and more natural, in a much more natural space. It still sounds a bit bright, but then that is the nature of this recording. The other main thing that we'll talk about on Owner of a Lonely Heart is Chris Squire's bass, and it's definitely got more of that Chris Squire growl to it, and so it's kind of like the two key elements, if you like, of Yes. In a way, you could argue with Chris Squire's bass sound and John Anderson's vocal sound. Both of them on here on the first track, Owner of a Lonely Heart, both of them are notably more Yes-like. Now, I just find that fascinating that Kevin Gray's managed to sort of find that in the mix and preserve it really. Where you know, to be perfectly honest, where Bob Ludwig didn't so well. You know, I mean, it's don't get me wrong, this impressed the hell out of me back in 1983, but then I sort of, you know, maybe 5-10 years after that, sort of began to grow a little tired of it and really returned to sort of the core of sort of the Yes album through to Going for the One, say, as my favourite Yes albums. But hearing this, it's not only reminded me very much of how excited I was when I heard this the first time round, and I'm getting that excitement from listening to this. It's also, I can appreciate it does sound more like Yes. So we go on. I mean, Hold On. It's you know, before they get into this sort of strange sort of you know, off time kind of little bit, there are points in Hold On here where I'm kind of thinking, Alan White's definitely not Bill Bruford, and they're very different drummers, but it's almost like on the original, it's a bit sort of like boring, just sort of, you know, just quite metronomic kind of drum beats. And on the Atlantic 75, that same section, I found myself tapping my foot. I couldn't help it. It's just, it was more catchy. The rhythms were more catchy. And I think that's really interesting. But Chris's bass has got much more growl. And actually, with the drumming being more infectious, with the bass seeming much more Yes-like, Rabin's guitar doesn't feel quite as out of place. So it's, you know, it's a really interesting thing, but it's you know, listening to this actually got me back into the album. If I'm going to run through the tracks a bit more. So we got onto side 2 of this, It Can Happen. I mean, there is just this beautiful bass guitar on, and it's just, it's exquisite production. It's phenomenal. It is hot. It is bright. There's bags of reverb. It's very kind of ABC-esque, if you like. You can kind of hear Trevor Horn's produced this, but what you're really hearing is someone with, you know, of the era. You either like it or you don't, but of the era, one of the most phenomenal producers who was used to doing, you know, massive pop acts. But you've got a phenomenal producer working with one of the most gifted, talented bunches of musicians ever to sort of, you know, record rock music. And it is stunning. It is absolutely stunning. You know, you've got to hear it. You really have. You know, okay, so again, the vocals, they got more openness, more body, more natural colour. The bass is just got, it's got more depth and grunt and growl and texture. You can kind of hear, I think you can hear sort of Pink Floyd influences in Rabin's guitar, for instance, which I didn't really sort of pick up on. And you know, the backing vocals are just absolutely beautifully separated. It's absolutely stunning. And then we go on to Changes. Again, you know, I haven't got a master tape of this. I haven't heard the master tape of this. I will actually say that one of the reasons that this was a little delayed is if we go to the credits on here, you got the band credits, produced by Trevor Horn, engineered by Gary Langham, additional engineering by Julian Mendelsohn and Stuart Bruce. Well, Stuart Bruce is a mate of mine, and he's appeared on this channel before now, and I did get in touch with him and I said, do you fancy coming over and having a listen? And you know, we'll have a chat about it and maybe do a video together. And he's just been too busy. Now I may well still try and get him over, and we'll return to it and do a video if he's up for it and if you think that was interesting. But, the point being, I haven't heard the master tape of this. Stuart clearly has, because he was recording engineer on this recording. But when you're listening to changes, in my notes here, I just wrote, there is an absolute feeling of being there, of listening to a master tape. And it really is the reality, the presence, the sort of purity, the detail, the separation on this is just, it is of master tape quality. It's phenomenal. It really, really, really is. Then we go on to disc 2. Anyway, we've got Cinema, which I mentioned. It's a very short instrumental track recorded live in Air Studios. It's kind of quite sort of forward and bright in an 80s kind of way, but it's just thunderously bass. The bass is just thunderous, and it's the guitars and the keyboards are just searing, which is like it's kind of what the song calls for, really. Leave It is, again, it's just it's weighty. It's got a weightiness and a warmth and a naturalness to it, but the separation, the clarity, and again when they sort of go into the sort of a cappella bit, it's just it really feels like you're listening to a multi-track tape. That you can't believe that these things have actually been put together, mixed together, cut into a groove, and being separated and pulled out. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. City of Love, again, hugely awesome. And then Hearts being the final, sort of epic, if you like, or mini epic on the album. And again, I would say it's just, it is more of that phenomenal sound. But whilst you've got, there's little things there which are just jaw-dropping in there. And in Hearts, one of the things, at the start, you've sort of got this sort of quite 80s, tum, 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 tum. I think, like sort of, I don't know if it's gated reverb. Stuart would be able to tell us this, but, there is a particular 80s drum sound. But then, a little bit deeper into the song, there's these sort of tom sounds, which is just, and again, I think how they do this is with compression. So they heavily compress, you hit the toms and you would get a massive peak, and then, the tail off as you hear the skin kind of resonating afterwards. And what you're hearing here is you sort of lost that massive peak, but you just hear the skin sort of just vibrating of these drums, and it's a magnificently captivating sound. It really, really, really is. But you put this album on, and like I said, it's not my favourite Yes album, but it was my last favourite Yes album, if you see what I mean. At the time when it came out, I can remember buying it on the day of release, and it blew my mind. That sort of Trevor Horn production of what was my favourite band. I don't think it's moving Yes into a more 80s world. It's got John Anderson on it again, which of course the previous album didn't have. Drama that had Trevor Horn, and it's got Tony Kaye, who of course was on the first 3 albums, and it doesn't have Steve Howe, which is, for me, I think is a bit of a shame, but there we go. The band sort of flows and morphs and sort of develops as it goes through the years and the decades, and it was a phenomenal sounding album, and it launched Yes into the 1980s in monumental style. And at the time it came out, it would have been my favourite Yes album. And I'm not saying it's my favourite Yes album now, but this has absolutely reignited my love of this album and appreciation of this album. And there is absolutely no question in my mind that this is a very, very notable step up in sound quality to the original Bob Ludwig cut. Okay, and what can I say? It's it's $60. That's not a vast amount of money for a phenomenally produced album, and I absolutely recommend this. I will be getting the Yes album, which is one of next month's issues, and if you'd be interested in me revisiting this, if I can get Stuart's interest levels up to come and talk about it, then do leave a comment, and I'll give him another chase and see if I can drag him along to have a listen and a chat. Okay. On that note, I say cheerio. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye now. Bye.